Go.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Hoboken Historical Museum. I'm guest hosting tonight. My name is Stu Chirichella. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter every Thursday, 7 p.m., live at the Hoboken Historical Museum. This is Hoboken Talks. We'd like to welcome today a very good friend of mine, special guest, Hoboken native, Jerry Citro. Jerry, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for welcoming me here to the Hoboken Historical Museum. I feel honored and ready to go.
Also, I'd like to thank Bob Foster for preserving our history. He does a wonderful job here at the museum. And I would also like to mention two people, Dominic L. and Dominic B., who passed away this week, Dominic Luciano and Dominic Buzzanelli, and also Patty Berg, 13 years in heaven, rest in peace. We can't forget our Hoboken people, so I just wanted to put that out there before we start the show. Thank you. So, here we are live. We're going to have a video stream up 1 second here of Jerry. If nobody knows who Jerry Citro is, a lot of people talk about changing their lives and going back in time if they could. Jerry actually did that. He went back to college at a later age in his life. Jerry went back and accomplished everything he set out to accomplish as a young kid. And I don't want to tell his story. He's more than happy to talk about it. But we have an interview coming up here from, I believe it was CNBC, correct, Jerry?
No, this one was from Good Morning America. And Dan's going to show you that.
Who's the oldest active player in professional basketball? Boston Celtics center Robert Parrish turns 40 this August.
If you remember Jimmy Connor's remarkable performance at the U.S. Open a few years back, you'll recall how he gave new hope to anyone beyond a certain age trying to play that young man's game. And if you remember the movie The Natural, you'll recall the heroism of an individual who beat the odds and conquered a terrible injury. Well, here's a story about a 39-year-old basketball player, a senior at Montclair State College, whose story combines the courage and conviction of both.
Yeah, baby!
Jerry Citro gets a little excited. He's always been that kind of basketball player, even the first time around, back in the 70s. Citro was a high school standout, a top college recruit. He wanted to go all the way.
I was a half hour outside of school, and it was a rainy, dreary night, and a car started coming at me. Evidently, he didn't see me, and I could see that he didn't know I was there. And I dove out of the way, and I left my leg behind as I dove, and he winged my leg and knocked me 50 yards into the woods, knocked my clothes off. It was a devastating thing. I had dreams for a long time after that about cars coming at me and stuff, and would wake up screaming. My mother used to tell me the stories.
Up until that day, the day of the accident, basketball was your entire life. I mean, you were nurtured from a little boy to being this great big basketball star. What did it do to you to lose it all?
It stripped me of my identity totally. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to be, what I was ever going to do. So I escaped it. I ran into a bottle. It was like a bad love affair that I had that I didn't even want to partake in anymore. There was something that told me that I wanted to live more than die after praying for long periods of time to die.
Jerry went into rehab with the help of his family. Although spiritually healed, he still had to deal with the reality of his physical limitations. So at age 39, Jerry Citro decided to even the score. Medically speaking, should Jerry be playing basketball?
Theoretically, Jerry shouldn't even be walking at this point. At the time that he got hit and when they originally operated on him, they were thinking of amputating his leg. He not only broke the two bones of his shin, the fibula and the tibia, and tore most of the ligaments, but he also tore the most important one, which was the anterior cruciate ligament in the center of his knee. So what we did is we had to come up with a brace to bring his foot up so he's not tripping over his toes when he runs. And again, what we did is we took a brace that's inside his shoe here, and this runs under his foot and brings his foot back up into a neutral position so that he can run and he's not tripping over his toes constantly.
The way he plays makes everyone else play harder. That's what he brings to the team more than anything else.
He does anything it takes to win, if not actually win, at least make yourself feel like a winner or want to be a winner.
I'm on the team. I'm part of it. Of course, I want them to do the best.
When you look up in the stands and you see your 15-month-old and your wife, look at your face. Look at you. What's that do for you?
He's my inspiration. He keeps me going, you know. I would never want to let him down and let him, for any reason, think that I ever quit at something. He's my inspiration.
When I talked to Jerry, I mentioned you guys, and his face just lit up. I mean, he seemed so serious about everything else, but when it came to you two, you're like the center of his world.
Yes.
Look at you. Oh.
It's nice. It's nice, it's nice having that mutual respect. And it's just a very nice feeling.
But Mr. Inspiration is also Mr. Modest. Granted, Jerry's main contribution to the team isn't scoring. In fact, the guys tell me he'd rather pass the ball than shoot. But not tonight, with just 3:44 left in a rather lopsided game. Jerry got the call, saw his opening, took his chance.
I don't know how many people get the opportunity to play at the collegiate level, organized sports, at 39 years old. After some of the things I've been through, it's a blessing.
I had one. Did you check it out? They gave me 3.
His spirit is so contagious.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know what? That was the only point he scored the whole season, was that game that we attended.
And you were there to capture
we were
it
there.
on tape.
I mean, he scored one other point from the free throw line, but that was the only point in a game, in an active game.
Now, he's a senior. He's graduating soon. What's he going to do?
Montclair State College in New Jersey.
Yeah.
He's holding almost a 4-point. I mean, this guy's incredible. He wants to be a PE teacher, and he wants to coach high school b-ball.
Well, to inspire young people.
Yeah.
No, that was
and to inspire anybody.
You bet. You bet.
All right.
Awesome footage you guys just had the privilege of seeing of Jerry. Jerry, just talk a little bit about that time. And we saw your lovely wife in the video with your child and what it meant to you to have your wife and child there going through all that turmoil that was in your life. And just on a, starting over process with the knee.
You know, a lot of things happened and a lot of things transpired getting there. And getting there was a situation that had promise. I started coaching basketball again after my injury, after years being off the court, and I was given the opportunity, or I was corralled into the opportunity by a guy named Charlie Rossi, an old Hoboken guy who used to run the rec program in Hoboken, and he came to me in my office. I was a big shop realtor driving a Jaguar, and thought I fixed everything. And Charlie said to me, "Hey, Jerry, nobody knows basketball like you. Do me a favor, coach this team. If you don't coach them, they're not going to have a team." So one day, I told him, "I can't. I'm too busy. One day, he brings the whole squad in, and a whole bunch of players. And they said, "Come on, you're going to coach us or what? What are you going to do?" And they were really street kids, just like I was. And they said, "Are you going to coach us or what?" And I looked at them and said, "Hey, guys, I don't have the time." And one of the kids said, "You ain't shit," and walked out. And I looked at him, I said, "I ain't shit." So I took the team over. And I started coaching at the Wireless Wildcats. And I coached there for 3 years while I was running my real estate company. And I fell in love with being back on the court and being with kids. And I got the opportunity to help a kid whose dad had a drinking problem. And dad was getting violent with mom. One day he was late for curfew. We had a 10 o'clock curfew. Kids had to be off the street. And I caught him walking the streets. So I brought him home. and his mom welcomed me, made me coffee. But the MO was his dad would go out drinking with his friends. So I had a long conversation with Mom, and eventually I got him into the Harbor, is where I went to treatment, on 14th Street in Hoboken, a place that John Clancy owned. And John Clancy was a great man that owned a lot of places for people in recovery. But it was the most rewarding experience of my life. I never felt better about who I was when I helped that kid and his family.
Let's not to interrupt, Jerry. See, I'm known to interrupt people. I know my wife's probably home saying, "Why are you interrupting Jerry for?" Before we go into the great stuff that you were talking about just now, we'll get back into that. Let's talk about you growing up in Hoboken, say in the 50s. I'm sure in 53 you were born, correct, Jerry? So in the 50s and 60s in town, and give people a little example of like what it was growing up in town in Hoboken at that time.
Hoboken was a very different town than what it is now. I grew up in an 8-family tenement building with the high stairs, and there were 8 cold water flats. For those of you who weren't around then, a cold water flat is a place where there's no heat in the house other than in the kitchen. The stove in the kitchen made the heat for the whole apartment. And there were 4 railroad rooms. And me and my older sister shared a bedroom, Mom and Dad, living room, and an eating kitchen. And that's how we grew up. My father was a factory worker, worked for Standard Brands. Now it's called the Tea House, and the condos in the building. But my father was a factory worker and worked 3 jobs to provide for us. And one of those jobs was cleaning offices after his work in the factory. And I used to go with him. I was the vacuumer, and he used to clean the toilets, dump the garbage, and I used to vacuum the rugs. And it was a rewarding experience because my father taught me what work ethic meant and how to work hard. And I pride myself on working hard. It's the only thing within my control. And growing up in Hoboken was tough. It was tough. I had a bunch of guys who were all great athletes, who lived on 4th and Monroe with me. One of them played in the NBA. My dear friend Jimmy Foster played for the Spirits of St. Louis in the ABA, and then the Denver Nuggets in the NBA. A few of my other dear friends are in the Hoboken Hall of Fame. Michael Peluso, Ricky Adio, Joe Petrosino, all good friends and people I grew up with on 4th and Monroe. The Adio brothers were Arnold and Ricky, and Vincent were like cousins to me. We just grew up together, hung out together, and we were a blended group. And my dear friend Tony Pena, but it was tough. It was tough growing up in Hoboken, and our best friend was Jimmy Foster, and we wound up doing a little rumbling when people dropped the N-word on him. And back then it was not so socially unacceptable to drop the N-bomb on a man of color, but we didn't tolerate it. We were tough kids, and we held our own. I went to number 3 school, graduated from number 3 school, and one of the parts of my story is I was a late bloomer. I played football, basketball, and I decided to take baseball off because the girls started to, springtime, started to get interested in the girlies. And so I took baseball off, but I played football and basketball, but I excelled in basketball. And by the time my senior year, I was starting 5 with guys who were 18 and 19, and I was still 16 years old. I graduated high school and turned 17 July 7th of the year I graduated. So when I graduated, the colleges didn't want to take a risk because I was so immature and so lanky and skinny, believe it or not. So they sent me off to prep school. Back in the day, that's how they used to redshirt us. We only had 4 years to play 4 years. Now athletes have 5 years to play 4 years. We had 4. So what colleges did is they they sent you to prep school to do a postgraduate year. And I went to North Yarmouth Academy in Yarmouth, Maine, and my football coach, Vinny Askeles, got me an interview with Johnny Wendelkin. Johnny Wendelkin's another Hobokenite, and Johnny was the coach of Worcester Academy in Worcester, Massachusetts. And Johnny didn't have any more basketball money, so he couldn't get me a scholarship. But he sent me to North Yarmouth Academy, who gave me a full scholarship to play. And the long and short of it is Johnny kicked himself in the ass because in the semifinals of the prep school championship from North Yarmouth Academy, I scored 23 and I shut down their high scorer. And as we were exiting on the line, when Delkin said, "I knew I shouldn't have let you go, Citro." And we went on to play Laurel Crest Academy, who had a kid from Snyder and a kid from Dickinson, who were great players. Mel Weldon and Kerry Walker, great players who wound up getting a little time in the NBA as well. And we played in the championship, and I was named All New England. 5 of us received All New England awards, and I led the championship game. I led all scorers, and there were 50 coaches waiting to shake Jerry Citro's hand.
So right from grammar school, say when you were in Killy School, which is the neighborhood I grew up in. Killy School was right on the corner from where I grew up. You knew basketball was your thing? You were convinced at an early age or not? How'd you really know? How'd you find out, like, this is for me? The guys were telling you, Jerry, you're good? Let's go.
No, guys in Hoboken don't tell you you're good. You got to find that out for yourself. Nobody tells you you're good. You got to get that confidence in yourself. I was the kind of guy that used to shovel the basketball court in the wintertime to go shoot 100 jump shots on Madison Street. 5th and Madison, we had a half court there, and that's where I shot 50, 60 jump shots every day, foul shots every day, and my game was I was a shooter. I could shoot the ball. And that's when I knew it was me. Once I got to high school and I started to get accolades from the cheerleaders, go Jerry, go Jerry, I knew that I was in the right place. And I played football on a great football team. We were 8-1. Our only loss was to Bayonne, 9-6. And I remember my buddy Jackie Maroney scored a touchdown that game. Jackie was our tight end from Ricky Adio, and Alfred Johnson, who's in the Hoboken Hall of Fame, was our running back. Michael Peluso was our offensive tackle in the Hall of Fame. Joe Petrosino was one of our guards. Gigi DePalma. What a great football team we had. And we went 8-1. That was one of Askeles's last year.
And then was it ever up for grabs like in college, or you knew you had the basketball scholarship, you weren't entertained in football anymore? That was it once you knew you were going to go to school? What even in high school? In high school, so you played football in high school, obviously we just said that, but like when you were getting ready to head off out of high school, did you really feel like this is it, I'm just going to stick with basketball?
No, as a matter of fact, when they gave me the scholarship to prep school, they told me I had to play 3 sports. Really? So I played football. We didn't have PE. So you had to play sports. Wow. So I played football, basketball, and baseball. And the football coach also wanted me. I was a wideout and a defensive halfback for North Yarmouth Academy. And then when basketball season rolled around, I really started to click. And we were really, of our 5 starters, 4 of us placed at a D1 school in prep school. So we were really good. And like I said, we made it to the New England Championship. John Groucho Walsey went to Providence. Tommy Gillums went to UMass. Myself and our point guard went to Holy Cross, Billy Strong. So we were a really good basketball team.
So in the streets too in Hoboken, like we know what we talk about. You mentioned before about the rehab stuff and all that. You know, I know people know I am in recovery. We both share the same passion for helping kids and getting better. What were some of the pitfalls for you, like as a kid coming up? What were the streets like with the atmosphere, like with the alcohol, with the drug scene? What was that like in Hoboken in the 60s? Because there are a lot of pitfalls for kids today that they need to watch out for, especially being athletes, that they don't go down the wrong road, that they stay on the path and go for their dream, you know?
You know, we started drinking and smoking weed at 13, 14 years old, and we were all athletes, so it was under control. Now and then we drink on the weekends. Every weekend was a party. And what really spearheaded my addiction was my injury. Because athletics was always number one for me, even in front of academics. And I know better than that now, but back in the day, I loved being an athlete and I loved playing sports. And when I decided to go to UNH on a full scholarship for basketball, UNH was in the Yankee Conference back then, and it wasn't about mid-majors back then. Conferences were in their area, so because teams couldn't travel as much as they do now. And the Yankee Conference was all the teams in New England, and all the teams in New England were lined up offering me scholarships, and I wound up taking a scholarship to the University of New Hampshire with a coach named Jerry Citro. Jerry Citro passed away from cancer, God rest his soul, but Jerry was a great guy. He was the assistant coach for Bob Cousy at Boston College, and Jerry got this opportunity at a very young age to take over the University of New Hampshire. And I was doing well preseason, working hard, but you get at that level and you got 15 guys on the court with you, all full scholarship guys. So there's no scrubs. They're all good players, and I had to prove myself. And I wanted to prove myself I could really shoot the ball, and coach had me running the 2 guard, and every time I caught on the wing, he'd scream out, shoot, shoot, and I had no problem with that. I never saw a shot I didn't like, as Stewie would say. And one day they had this 6'7" recruit on me. And he just, I was much quicker than him. And I hit 2 or 3 jumpers in his eye, and coach is screaming at him, get out on him. And he came out on me. I went by right side with him and I dunked on him. And that's all she wrote. The whole team went, whoa. And that's how I got my name at UNH. But Thanksgiving break, I go home. And I had a bunch of really, really good friends who I loved, and they loved me. And it wasn't about them not caring about me. I want to make that clear. It was just the way it was. So now they're eating goofballs, barbiturates, sleeping pills. And my boy comes and gets me. He's got a bag full of Paris Blues. He says, take a couple of these. I said, nah, man, I got to get back to practice. I'm running with the starting 5. And he looked at me and he said, what, you turn into a punk on me? And I couldn't take that pressure. You could be anything in Hoboken but a punk. Anything. And I took a couple and all bets were off. That was on Wednesday night. And we ate these pills all that weekend. By the time it was time to go back to school, my father asked me if he wanted to ride to Newark Airport. I got to tell this story because you're going to all laugh at this. When I flew from Newark Airport to Logan Airport, there was something called student fares, and all I had to pay were the taxes on the flight. My flight cost me $19. So it was a shuttle going to Logan, and we got there late. My boys picked me up. They were getting high in the car. We got distracted. We got there late. And by the time I got to Logan, I had missed the van service that was going to pick us up to take us to practice. So I decided to hitchhike. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm about a half hour on 95, rainy, dreary night, and a half hour outside of the University of New Hampshire. And this car was coming at me, and I was dressed pretty cool. I had a dark pea coat on, jeans, high Ian Anderson boots on. And I took a towel out because I knew it was dark, no lights. So I'm waving a towel, hoping that people would see me and give me a ride. And this car was coming on the entrance ramp. And at the very last minute, I saw that he didn't realize I was there. And he started merging early. And by the time I could adjust and get out of the way, I only had one step. I dove, and the next thing I knew I woke up about 50 yards in the wood my jacket knocked off, bleeding. And they rushed me to the hospital. He went off the next exit, called the ambulance, came back and got me, thank God. I would have died out there. And they took me in, and they cut off my jeans, and I got the first look at my leg. And I almost passed out. My bone was almost out of my skin, and he hit me on the outside of my right leg, and it ended my basketball career. When I left the hospital after 3 surgeries, of which every time they thought of amputating my leg, I had this heroic doctor who fought to save my leg, and he saved my leg. But I asked him when I left, Doc, am I ever going to play basketball again? And he said, son, you'll never walk unassisted. You'll either be in a wheelchair or on crutches for the rest of your life.
But before this accident, you were telling a great story about how you were on the court. You were starting in college?
Yes.
You had a starting spot. Were any games played at all yet? Or
we didn't play any games yet. Our first game
was just like camp, just going in and summertime coming in?
Yeah. And before I left, the coach sat me down. He looked at me and he said, Jerry, I've never seen anybody shoot like you. I've been around basketball my whole life. I've never seen anybody knock down shot after shot after shot like you. You're such a street shooter. He said, you're going to get a lot of playing time, and you got a shot at the NBA if you keep your head on right. Because he knew I was a little bit of a knucklehead coming out of Hoboken. Had a couple of fights in camp and trying to show who I was. I actually got my ass beaten pretty good by the captain, but I made it through that. But it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. It was my whole life. It was my dream. It was everything I wanted or everything I thought I wanted. And when I got back to Hoboken, drugs are funny. You start with the mild stuff, and it's called the gateway theory of addiction. And eventually, the mild stuff doesn't do the trick. And you go to something a little bit more heavier, little goofballs, little ups and downs, little hallucinogens. And when that doesn't work anymore, then you're off to the races with, and back in the 70s was during the Vietnam War, at the end of the Vietnam War, and they were flooding the streets with heroin. Heroin, you could buy heroin anywhere in the streets of
Joe Nardello.
Hey Joey, how are you? So nice to hear from you, Joe. Thank you for texting in. But heroin was on the streets, and this was in the mid 70s, and we lost so many good kids to heroin overdoses during that time. So many really, really good kids. We hung out on 4th and Jeff, and I can name 15, 20 guys who overdosed during that time on heroin. And I was lucky enough to make it out.
Just going back real quick, it's just like this event is so like, it's either going to make or break you. Like I'm picturing you in the hospital. You're sitting there like, did you wake up and come to? Was there a surgery? Did they tell you what was going to happen? Say this is what's going on. Like talk about that because that's an interesting scene for me. Yeah.
When I woke up, I was in a full cast and I was screaming. They were giving me as much morphine as they could to alleviate the pain, and because of all the goofballs I ate, there was a cross tolerance. So the morphine was not alleviating the pain, and they couldn't give me any more. And the doctors said they were going to have to lacerate my leg from my ankle to above my knee, which they did. And my leg basically exploded. He stuffed it all back together, sewed me up, and I had an open wound for the next 2 years that didn't fully heal. So I was in really bad shape. They sent me home with today's OxyContin. Back in the day, they were called Darvon. And Darvon was a opiate that they wound up taking off the market. So I was eating these Darvon, 3 or 4 a day just to alleviate the pain. because of the nerve damage, Stewie, my foot felt like when, you know how your foot feels when it falls asleep, pins and needles? Felt like that all the time, in constant pain.
So you call mom and dad?
Call mom and dad come and get me, come and picks me up at, I was at Haverhill Hospital in Haverhill, Massachusetts, at the top of Massachusetts, and they drove me home, and I spent the next year in a house. And the first time I went out, I remember who came and picked me up. My buddy Bobby Trapani came and picked me up. I hope Bobby's listening. Bobby came and picked me up, and we went out to a bar, got drunk, and he almost carried me up the stairs to get me home. And when I finally was able to get out on the street on my own, the boys had graduated to the next drug, and they were all using heroin. And first time I went out with them, they had copped, went over a friend's house, and I watched them get off. I watched them shoot heroin.
Now, what year is this, Jerry?
Talking about 1973. Saw them shoot heroin, and they asked me if I wanted some, and I said absolutely, because I wanted out of the physical and emotional pain that I was going through. And then, you know, they also talk about PTSD being a precursor to addiction for many people. And the pain and the discomfort and not being able to understand that I lost basketball was too much for me to handle at 18 years old. I couldn't handle.
Now, I know a lot of guys that maybe just, they went out to college, you know, and they were perfectly healthy when they came back. They just didn't want to go to school no more. And they were athletes, and they were good athletes. But they just lost maybe the flair, whatever the desire, or maybe they went to the tragedy with you was you had no choice. You would have been more than happy to stay in college. You know, it's crazy how it turned on you. But the reality is, like, now you're in that state of mind, and then you're back on the block, and then I know you probably hated. You got to explain to everybody, yeah, maybe I'll get there. Or in your own mind, you're trying to tell yourself, yeah, maybe I'll play again. Was that coming in or not?
And with the destruction of my leg, I knew I was done. And that was something that I had a hard time accepting. I knew I was done. I couldn't even put pressure on my leg for 2 years. I had to walk with crutches and not weight bearing on my right leg at all. My friends, you know, we were tough on each other in Hoboken. You know, we didn't pull punches. They used to call me Peg Leg. My buddy Joe Toomey gave me that name. Yo, Peg Leg, where are we going tonight?
The big voice, Jerry.
But anyway, it was a devastating experience, and for the next 15 years, I just ran. Some of you may remember, Joey Nardello and I know remembers the days of Harpo's when I was a disc jockey playing. Harpo's was a little bar on the corner of 5th and Madison Street, right on the corner, 501 Madison, that had a sunken dance floor. And we put a sound system in, and I used to DJs on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and we used to get packed. People loved it. And actually, story goes is I was arrested twice right in Harpo's for the distribution of cocaine. And that's where it went. That was my last drug of choice. And it got to a point where my family couldn't trust me in the house because I would steal from them, steal from my little sister. And I hated myself. I wanted to die. And eventually my cousin gave me, I call him my cousin, a friend of mine gave me a night's work at his bar. I was actually living in my 1963 Chevy. And I went and bartended for him. And how I repaid him was about the end of the night, I ripped him off. I stole from him. And I knew that I was in a lot of trouble because he was not the kind of guy that was going to accept that. I really was in a lot of trouble. And I went to my father and I begged him for help. And the alcoholic and drug addict is the last person who knows they got a problem. My father knew I had a problem. My mother knew I had a problem. And my father said, I'll help you, but you're going to go right to the treatment center. And I remember it was a Monday night football. I bartended for him on a Sunday night, got back into Hoboken on Monday morning after spending all the money, smoking it at a crack house, and I knew I was in trouble. My father took me to the bar, paid the guy back, and took me right to the harbor. And when I went into the harbor, egomaniac with low self-esteem, I told the head counselor I'd have his job before I left. And I spent 42 days in the harbor trying to learn how to live without alcohol and drugs. Going through in the beginning, they had to harness me to a gurney because I was going through delirium tremors. And I didn't even know I had an alcohol problem. I knew I couldn't stop smoking crack. That was on September 8th, 1986. So this September will be 36 years of recovery. And it has been the greatest gift that was ever freely given to me. And that's because of a person who I call God. I don't know if he's a person, a being, man, woman. All I know is he rescued me.
Describe to a lot of people, Jerry, for me personally, I know I was actually in treatment twice. But the first time I really didn't want to be there, I was forced. The second time I went voluntarily. But even though you go in sort of you were voluntarily, your father gave you a little push, but like when you're sitting in there, like the doubt creeps in all the time. Like you say, am I going to make it out of here? Am I really going to do this? Do I really want to do this? Like a lot of people don't understand what you go through as those early stages in recovery. It's a tough time. That's why a lot of people don't stick around,
If AA meetings were for people who needed them, we'd be having them at Giant Stadium. AA's for people who want it. And you're absolutely right, Stu. My first denial was with alcohol because I knew crack was kicking my ass. I knew it was kicking my ass. I'm spending all my money. I didn't have any money. I had to sell. And but when they told me I had to stop drinking, I said, what? Why? Because I didn't realize I was an alcoholic until they had to strap me on that gurney and I was going through DTs. Did I realize I was an alcoholic? And there was still denial. I said, you mean 20 years from now when I have a daughter and she's getting married, I can't have a toast of champagne? That's what, are you guys crazy? Because alcohol was everything to me. I worked in bars. After I DJ'd, I became a waiter. I had the silver spoon at Sunny D's, tasting people's wine.
Rick Kramer.
Hey, Ed, thank you so much. It was an amazing journey, and I'm really, really blessed. And thank you for logging in, Eric. That was great. But
so you come on, all right? Here we go. Now you're turning it around. So you start to do, like you said before, you're riding a Jaguar, you're doing real estate. What in the world? I read a great article on Jerry Wayne Coffee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
New York Times. Is it the New York Times?
It was the Daily News.
Daily News.
But Wayne was a New York Times writer.
But just a great article he did on Jerry and how he turned it around. What gives you that, I'm going back to college, I'm going to start playing ball again? Where did that come from? Just 3 years with the real estate stuff?
3 years in real estate. And there's a part of me as an addict who was a get-over, who was a con artist, who was a manipulator. And real estate allowed me to continue to be a manipulator. And that wasn't healthy for my self-esteem and
no
who
offense,
I was.
Mark Singleton. No offense.
No offense. And Maureen was one of my mentors, as a matter of fact, Mark. I go back a long time before you. Having said that, I was a manipulator. And most real estate people are above board and honest and forthright and authentic. I wasn't. I was a manipulator. And if you could breathe on a mirror, I'd get you a mortgage and get you a house and get you in it. Whether you had money or not, it didn't matter. I manipulated the system. And it started to be really uncomfortable with me after a while because I started getting honest with myself and started to have some dignity and respect. And when I started getting dignity and respect, I said, this is not for me. But when I got back on the basketball court at Wallace, I knew it was for me. And I was helping kids. And I felt great about what I was doing. And my wife still puts money in a little jar for my therapy. Of course, I was making more selling real estate in 1987 than I made last year after 27 years in education. But I just couldn't live that life anymore. And I told my wife I'd like to go back to college so I could teach and coach. And I want to do it right. I want to go back and get an education so I really know how to deal with kids and help kids. And I went in at first, you sort of the thing about the Montclair State University. And by the way, that year, I was called up by the Unico of Cedar Grove. And they said to me, Jerry, you don't know who we are, but we know your story. They saw me on Good Morning America. And we would like to propose you as the Amateur Athlete of the Year, an award that Joe Montana, Dan Marino, Vinny Testaverde all got in previous years. I said, wait a minute. You want Jerry Citro to be Amateur Athlete of the Year? They said, yes, we're going to put you up as a nominee. 2-3 weeks later, they called me back and they said, Jerry Citro, people loved your story and we would like you to accept National Amateur Athlete of the Year. And they flew me out to Kansas City, Kansas for the honor. And you can show those pictures, man, of me getting the award with my lovely bride. And by the way, I got to give my daughter a shout out. That's when she was conceived, when I was in Kansas City. So I'll not only give her a shout out, embarrass her a little, but there's me and my bride getting the Dr. Negro National Award for Amateur Athlete of the Year.
And what year was this, Jerry?
This was in 1993. This is when all the segments came out. In addition to Good Morning America, I also was in World News Tonight, CNN Sports, and CBS Sports. As a matter of fact, my buddy Angelo Cerrone was in Mexico, and he called me up. He said, hey, I just saw you on television. I said, yeah, it's me on CNN Sports. It was pretty cool. That's my family. I'm so blessed. My son and my daughter are the greatest kids. My wife, I met the love of my life in recovery. These are all the blessings I got along the way. My son, Division I athlete, MAC MVP, went to TCU to play in the College World Series, got a walk-off hit against Dallas Baptist, who had the #1 closer in the country, who he got the hit off of. My daughter Fabiana was the captain of her field hockey team at Siena College. Pound for pound, a better athlete than my son. But he doesn't want to hear that. He would never take that. And my wife always takes the fame and glory because my wife actually held the hurdles record and the 4x4 record at her high school for years. So she was quite the athlete too. And I'm blessed to have a family that I love and that I adore and that I'll always protect.
And talk about the business your wife had in Montclair, how you transitioned when you went back to school and all that stuff.
My wife was the national sales manager for Guess Jeans when I met her. And when I met her, we started dating and we got really, really close. And we decided to move in together. And then we found out we were pregnant with Vincent. She was pregnant. I always say we, but obviously you guys know what I mean. She was pregnant with Vincent. And she decided that she could not be in the garment industry anymore. That with all the accolades and everything that she achieved, she was going to walk away from it in order to raise her son. And she did. She walked away from it. When we moved out to Montclair, she opened a daycare center. And she ran a family daycare center for our house for their whole high school career, almost 20 years.
Wow.
She started when Vincent was 1 till Fabiana was 18 and out of high school. And that's how I was able to go back to school. Also through the benefit of this disability, the American Disabilities Act, I was able to get some money from them as being a disabled person to go back to college. But it was a journey. It was a journey, and it was tough at times. But my wife stuck by me and supported me, and not only got me an undergraduate work. I think education is wasted on the youth. I not only got my undergraduate degree, by the way, with a 3.96 GPA, and you can tell by my diction I'm not a rocket scientist, but I did the work, and everybody can do the work if you want to put in the effort. Then I went right back to school and got a master's in counseling with my SAC certification, and 2 years later I went back and got a principal certification. So I have 2 master's degrees. This kid from 4th and Monroe Street, who has a hard time with the English language, as you can see, Hoboken diction, but loved going to school and loved learning. And now I gave up coaching after almost 300 wins at the varsity level.
Can we see a picture of that girls' team? Can you show that girls' team?
Oh, yeah, I can bring that up. Sure.
Yeah.
Give me a sec.
This was my 2005 state championship team. They went to the semifinals of the Group 4 championship. A great team. We wind up finishing ranked 6th in the state of New Jersey. But they were state championships, as you can see my rings, Stewie.
How, do you still keep in touch with anybody?
All of them are my Facebook friends, every one of them.
That's awesome.
Every one of them, all still in Montclair. As a matter of fact, Simone Hodges, me and her new husband work together. Christina's cousin, Dion Mingo, works with me. Francis Mosley has kids. Kenise is the head coach of West Orange High School. She won the state championship 2 years ago. Jennifer Jennings is Major Jennings' daughter, and standing next to me is Coach Jamie Bittner, who's the only assistant coach in the state of New Jersey in the New Jersey Hall of Fame. He coached with Eddie Labita and then John Fiore football, and was my assistant coach in basketball. But that was a great team and a great bunch of kids. Of that team, 6 of them, 6 went on to play college basketball.
Wow. You know, I knew Jerry. I asked Jerry the question, but I knew the answer. I didn't know it, but I knew what he was going to say, because I know Jerry. It's more than coaching for Jerry. He loves, just same as me, he has the same passion. I love working with younger kids. Jerry always likes working with kids. I was at Jerry's Hall of Fame for a friend of mine that was going to celebrate, going to be inducted that night, who had passed away. I was going to go there for his wife and his daughter, but I knew Jerry was going to be there, and I stood around all night. I think Jerry was last to speak that night, correct?
That is correct.
And Jerry did not one time speak about himself. You know what Jerry talked about the whole time in a room full of friends, but there were a lot of strangers there, probably people he didn't know, a little younger generation. He talked about how to stay away from alcohol and drugs, how to basically be careful with substance abuse today, and how it's getting worse and what's going on in the world. And he didn't want any accolades for himself. And this is Jerry. This is who he is. This is why I love this guy, because we're on the same page because of the fact that he just loves to give back. And you can hear by the way he talks, the passion in his voice, just talking about the kids and the girls and how he stays in touch. And that's such a blessing. And I know you could talk about that and the kids. And I mean, what's better than that? There's no better feeling.
No better feeling. Every morning I get up ready and skip to work. I'll be 69 in July. I'm still skipping to work. Love being with the kids. Love the energy they give me. I could do away with the bureaucracy in education, but other than that, love working, love being around kids. And I'm around them every day. We open the doors at the middle school I work with kids 11, 12, 13, 14 in a middle school in Montclair. We open the doors, 600 of them walk into the door. And you know, out of 600, there's going to be somebody I need to help that day. And I love doing it. Great bunch of kids, great bunch of staff I work with. I'm really, really blessed. This is my 27th year of service to the Montclair Public Schools. And now I've grown, so I now teach at.
Oh, hi, Stu. Gotta say hi, Jerry, too. But hi.
Hi, Kareem.
Kareem.
I teach at King University, and I teach a postmaster's certification program, and I teach young people, young adults, who have their master's degree, how to be substance awareness coordinator. And I teach them about the detriments and the downfall of alcohol and drug use. And I actually tell them my story in the process of that.
There you go.
Thank you. Stewie had a shame.
It ain't about me. I'm just here enjoying this. I'm just chilling.
You want to take a look at Pete Maravich for a second here?
Pistol Pete, there he is.
That's my high school yearbook photo.
Hoboken High School.
Hoboken High School.
71?
Played for 70. Played for George Connors. George and Billy Connors. That's Terry Green sent me a pic. Went to the University of Vermont. It's about 6'8". That's our gym. For those of you who know Hoboken High School gym, you can tell by the tile.
Same gym.
Standing next to Jimmy Foster. Jimmy Foster played in the NBA. First year Spirits of St. Louis. Next year, 2 years, Denver Nuggets. Great guys, Bruce Radigan's there, Kevin McCord, God rest his soul, Alfred Johnson, Edwin Duroy, the younger brother of our old superintendent, Terry Green, Dino Matisich, Howie Risen. What a great pitcher, great group.
Now you told me you guys didn't like win the state or county or nothing that year? Anything?
We didn't win anything.
And this was a great team. Like how fierce was the competition in the county at the time?
I'm going to tell you, this is a quick story. I got injured my senior year, twisted my ankle. So I was out almost 4 weeks in the heart of our season in the month of January. But when I got back, we played against Memorial High School. And, we were playing against guys that went to Duke. O'Connor went to Duke, played for Hudson Catholic. Eddie Miller, who played in Europe for almost 10 years. And I played head-on-head against 16 years old now. He was 18, and I played head-on-head against Albie Osiris.
The mayor, right? We became the mayor, no?
Albie Osiris was the mayor and the congressman,
Yeah.
and still the congressman.
Yeah.
And Albio and I went head-to-head, and I outscored him that game. We beat Memorial at the Hoboken High School gym. But we had a tough season, and we played against real. Back then, Hudson County was a hub of basketball. That's when St. Peter's, who went to the NCAA tournament, they're nothing like the team with Harry Laurie, Amato Webster on the team, who actually went to the NCAA tournament that year. Hudson County was the hub, and that's where we all know Bob Hurley got his start right here in Jersey City. Started getting all the kids from Jersey City and putting them in the Armory, and that's where St. Peter's played, in the middle of the Armory.
Mm-hmm. Talk about mom a little bit, yeah.
Quick story, I'm going to tell you how long and how ancient we are in Hoboken. My mom is 90 years old. She lived at 406 Monroe Street for 86 of those 90 years in the same building. Her and my dad were married for 69 years. And this is old school Hoboken. My grandmother came through Ellis Island, grandma and grandpa, my mother's mother and father, and they bought the building at 406 Monroe Street, I think for like $3,000. And it was an 8-family cold water flat building. And all the family, I had Aunt Nancy, Uncle Mo, all the family took an apartment, and we're all in the building together. And Mom was in that building her whole life. Now Mom is with my youngest sister, Cammie, who lives in Pennsylvania. And Cammie's taking care of her, thank God, because it's hard for Mom.
Ducky Fontana.
Hey, Doc.
Father Stu, the movie that's coming out, Father Stu, with Mark Wahlberg. Ducky.
So thanks, Ducky, for shouting out. I really appreciate that. But Mom has been a Hobokenite her whole life. And that was old school. Mom was born in my godmother's house at 413 Monroe Street. She was born in that house. We didn't go to hospitals back then. And then her mother was cooking lasagna right an hour after her birth. That's old school Hoboken. Ashley Hammond is a guru in soccer in Montclair. He ran the soccer dome in Montclair for years, and now he has his own dome on 46. Him and I were recognized as potential great physical education instructors. I graduated with a physical education and health degree. That's my Montclair State graduation. There's me at graduation with my boy, Vincent, who's now 30 years old. And quick story for you guys. So we moved to Montclair because I go to school in Montclair and at Montclair State and loved the town. So when me and my wife move out, we have Vincent, and we raised our kids, went through all the Montclair school system. Then they both went off for Division I scholarships at Siena College. And now my son is 30, my daughter will be 27 next month. And guess where they live? They live in Hoboken. So it's the circle of life.
He came back.
And that's a caricature of one of the students at Montclair State. When I was playing at Montclair State, drew that of me. Looked pretty good back then, right? I was 40 years old when they drew that caricature. Okay. Now, I didn't look like that. He kind of made me look really good. Yeah, he muscled me up a little bit. But I was in shape. I was running every sprint and doing everything that the 19 and 20-year-olds were doing. But I was more of a coach than a player.
What advice say maybe today? Who's that? Chen's 30 and still better athlete than Fabi.
Chen's is my son. 30 is still a better athlete than his sister Fabi. Now, Fabi, you better write in. I'll give your brother the last word.
What would you? Okay.
No, we've seen this.
Yeah. There you go. Talk about your coaching.
I coached every sport in Montclair. Coached my kids all through growing up. I coached my son in baseball, and to put a feather in my boy's cap, he started at Siena College for 4 years, and he is the all-time run scorer at Siena College. He holds the run scored record, and he's third on the hit list, and he missed being first on the hit list by 6 hits. And I tell the story about his sophomore year when he decided to have a girlfriend. And the girlfriend distracted him a little from being able to hit. And if he would have not had a girlfriend his sophomore year, he would have broke that record because that was his worst year of college hitting. And as a matter of fact, his worst year ever of hitting. But Vincent was a great hitter, wound up finishing with the 300 batting average. And like I said, still holds the record for runs scored at Siena College. Fabiana was a beast. Fabiana, some guy stopped me during a game at Montclair State where Fabiana hit a rocket that hit the wall at the college softball field. And when she hit the ball, people went and like took their breath away because it went out like a rocket. And the guy comes up to me and said, "She swings the bat like a man." I said, "Yeah, she does." Yeah, she does. Fabiana could hit, but wind up being a great field hockey player because she could also run. That's Vincent at Montclair High School on the foul line. He couldn't shoot as well as Dad, but he did other things. He could hit much better than me, but he couldn't shoot like I could. But he wasn't a bad shooter. Not a bad defender either. That's Major Jennings in the background. Major was Vincent's coach, great guy. Me and Major coached side by side. He had the boys, I had the girls for 20 years. And we had a real successful, very, very proud of the kids we put out of that program. That's Coach Bitton. I told you his story. The only assistant coach in the history of New Jersey Hall of Fame that made it to the Hall of Fame. That's my baseball team. There's my daughter's the bat girl. We won the Serbo championship that year, and that's Vincent's team. Coach Benenson.
I know. We got to wrap it. I know we're getting close.
That's all right. Yeah.
But I just want to say, like, for Jerry to talk to, like, the kids today, there's a ton of distractions for these kids. I mean, there's so much, like, with the Facebook and, you know, all types of stuff to go on and whatever. They're just glued to their phones. And, like, a lot of these kids could be potential athletes and good athletes and make a better life for themselves and get out maybe to school that way or whatever way, you know, any kids coming up, it could be an outlet for them. Like, what advice would you have, like, for a kid to stay focused? Because it's hard today, you know. They got a lot of stuff going on, these kids.
Very, very hard to stay focused, and COVID made it even harder for them. Remember,
your daughter. Hold on one second. Your daughter,
my kids now run the marathon, so Fabiana had a better half marathon time than Vincent, so she gave herself a little shot out of that. Probably, you know. It's really, really hard. Remember, our kids were out of school on a computer for a year and a half and weren't getting those social skills that they normally, those interpersonal skills. And they come back to school and they forget what being a student's about. And they're really, really struggling. We have a lot of kids who have high levels of anxiety, depression, and are struggling through school, trying to keep focused. But for the kid who wants to be the athlete, always remember one thing. You're a student athlete. Student first. Because when you get to the next level, there's going to be somebody that's going to have the same stats as you, with the same height, the same speed, the same versatility, the same ability to shoot. And the coach is going to have you and him in front of you. And they're going to say, who's going to stay in college for 4 years? Who's going to make it at the collegiate level? Who's going to be able to manage the academics? And if you can't manage the academics, he's going to take the other kid. Because remember, there's always somebody as good as you. Always. As good as you are, there's somebody as good as you. So keep your academics and your athletics on track. And work hard. There's one thing in our control in athletics. One thing is how hard we work. Everything else is out of our control. And I continue to work hard every single day. I work 6 days a week. I'm hoping that after next year, after my 28th year of service, that I'll be able to retire. But who knows if my wife will let me. No, my wife is she's ready to go to Italy with me. So hopefully after next year, I'll retire. And we'll go off to greener pastures where we could go visit the Amalfi Coast and visit the Philippines and visit all the places we want to go. But that's my dream and aspiration, is to retire with the love of my life, take our little dog Bentley, and go off to greener pastures.
Who was this, Jerry?
This was coaching baseball with my son. We played at a field called Watsessing Park, and I'm the third base coach. So looks like I'm watching somebody taking a lead, making sure they're not taking too much of a lead.
What do you think? Like, your kids are two great athletes. So what do you think about them if they would have came up in Hoboken at that time? Would you have liked them to grow up in Hoboken or no? The Hoboken we grew up in. I always say I wouldn't want my daughter to grow up in the Hoboken I grew up in, to be honest with you. You know, for the life lessons and the skills we got, the street knowledge, maybe it would have helped her. Oh, you know what? I wouldn't have grown up in the era that I grew up in. I wouldn't want my daughter to have.
Yeah,
I always say that.
it was really tough here. And that's one of the reasons why me and my wife left. It was tough here.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Hoboken we know now.
Yeah.
It was really tough here. If you aren't a tough street kid, you're in a lot of trouble in Hoboken.
Yeah.
It was tough for the guys and girls. You know, we grew up tough, and you know, I wanted it to be a little bit easier for my kids, for them to have a little bit easier of a life, and I think we all want that for our kids. Would I change anything from growing up in Hoboken? Hell no. I love growing up in Hoboken. But that's looking back in retrospect. While I was in the middle of it, it was tough. It wasn't an easy place. I mean, little gang fights and little wars. I mean, we were on the streets.
Now, would you like to have the real estate at this point?
The first house I bought when I was in real estate was on 11th Street between Garden and Park on the southern exposure side of the street, and it was a beautiful brick row house. We had 3 stories and a basement apartment, and I think my wife looked it up because my wife is doing real estate now in Montclair at Keller Williams. She looked it up, and I sold the house in 89, 90, maybe 91. For a little bit over $400,000. Now it's for sale for $1.5 million. So if we could have hung in there a little bit longer, we would have been well off. But we did okay, honey. Me and my wife did okay.
You want to shout out anybody, Jerry, before we start to get out of here?
Yeah, I want to shout out to everybody that listened. Thank you very much for spending time with me and Stu. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you listening, and thank you for sending the text, and I know my family's listening. You know how much I love you, and thank you guys for listening and being there always for me. And I appreciate everybody. Thank you.
From the family, from me to you, your dad's a special man. He's just still in touch with a lot of us guys down here when we have our meetings. He's always checks in to see how we're doing. He started a great thing down here that I'm lucky to be a part of and continue the tradition down here in Hoboken. So I'm blessed to know him, and thank you guys for loaning to us when you do. Appreciate that.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, that's our conclusion for Hoboken Talks with Jerry Citro. Coming soon, we have John Cheney, take 2. After that, we have Vincent Cassessa. And this is in memory of Mel Kiernan. This is the New Jersey Historical Commission. Special thanks. The New Jersey Council for Humanities. Special thanks. The Shipyards Circle. Very special thanks. Applied Development Company. Big sponsor. Very special thanks. For the history of Washington Street, the Avenue, the Hoboken Museum. We thank you, Chens. Thank you, Stu. Very nicely done and kind words. Thank you, Chens. For the upper gallery here, we have our exhibition going on. It started March 6th. It just started, actually. Ends May 1st. Please come in. Check out the artwork. Please come in and check out the Hoboken Historical Museum in general. Just take a walk by. Small donations appreciated. And comment also on the YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you. This is we're over and out. Hoboken Historical Museum. Thank you very much, guys.